a lot of the money that I invested back into not only building the sport, building my own brand, it was 5 to 7 years of really putting everything back into, make this momentum happen to be able to be this full-time athlete. To be a female in action sport, I think is like the best time it's ever been.
John,
here's Aloisi for a place in the World Cup.
For us.
He scored! Australia have done it!
And when people talk about being in the zone, I think that's as close as I probably could get to being in the zone, because there were 83,000 people there, but I could only hear whispers in the stadium.
It's the same with sort of anything that I go into that I do. Like, I used to play footy as a junior. And as a junior, I went in there and I wore a sunnies and a hat when I played. And you'd always get people questioning, like, how can this guy play this when he can't see? So I've dealt with it all my life.
Welcome to Onside, the official podcast of Sport Integrity Australia. Our mission is to protect the integrity of sport and the health and welfare of those who participate in Australian sport.
Hello and welcome to Sport Integrity Australia's podcast Onside. I'm Tim Gavel. On this podcast, we speak with 8-time BMX and mountain bike world champion Caroline Buchanan. We also relive one of the greatest moments in Australian sport, John Aloisi's penalty goal against Uruguay, which cemented Australia's spot in the 2006 World Cup in Germany. And we chat to Paralympian Chad Perris, a bronze medallist in the 100 metres at the Rio Paralympics. The 2021 World Anti-Doping Code will come into effect on the 1st of January 2021. For athletes and others involved in sport, it's important to understand the changes and how they affect you. Visit our website at www.sportintegrity.gov.au for more. And over the course of 2021, Sport Integrity Australia will be hosting a number of free webinars for sports on key integrity issues. Our next webinar is designed for teachers and will be on Wednesday the 2nd of December from 7 to 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. The webinar will familiarise teachers with the new secondary school resource kit, which is designed to support teachers who teach topics such as supplements, doping, match fixing and ethics in sport. You can simply find out more by emailing education@sportintegrity.gov.au to join. Well, our first guest is 8 times BMX and mountain bike world champion Caroline Buchanan. Caroline has competed in 2 Olympics and is now preparing to attempt to qualify for next year's Tokyo Olympic Games. It's been a tough couple of years for Caroline following an off-road accident which resulted in a number of serious injuries. But she's back and ready for her 3rd Olympics. She's currently ranked 3rd in Australia, with the top 2 making it through to Tokyo. And Caroline is with us today. And Caroline, having a look firstly at the postponed Olympic Games, how hard has it been to focus on the Olympics given that delay?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tim. We've had multiple chats over the years throughout my sporting career, and right now, for me, the break has been a huge blessing in disguise. So for some athletes, it was devastating. They're at the peak of their careers. For me, I was building back from 2.5 years off the bike with multiple setbacks and injuries. So I had a long way to go. I not only needed to rebuild myself back to my peaks and hitting my PBs, but the world had progressed, the sport had progressed. So I also needed to realise in those 2 years there was new competitors, new girls that had stepped up, and I was only getting older and I'd had all this time off. So I really had to build a solid, not only foundation, but team around me. And COVID was something that brought me back to Australia and really reset my foundation. So it's been a blessing.
Firstly, coming back to Australia, you had been based in California, but you're back here in Australia now?
Yeah, so for the last 10 years of my career with BMX and mountain biking, the whole international scene is very much Southern California dominated. So I managed to spend, majority of my time there and then travel the world through the 2 Olympic cycles of London and Rio. And my long-term goal was to always come back to Australia, back to my roots. I thought that it would be after Olympics and within the next 3 to 5 years. But this was the perfect opportunity to, get out of California and reset some things back here in Australia.
Injury-wise, it's been a tough couple of years, hasn't it? After that off-road accident at Cooma a couple of years ago, and injury-wise, it's been terrible.
Yeah, it's been challenging. So it was pretty highly documented, but for those that don't know, I had an off-road vehicle accident where, went underneath the vehicle. The roll cage crushed me and crushed my body. So in the process, it broke my sternum bones, then punctured my heart wall lining then bled out into my 2 double punctured and collapsed lungs, so double pneumothorax. And then went into, ICU, spent that time, and then went through 3 full sternum reconstructions, 28 bolts, wires, plates, everything over a year and a half to basically fix my chest and hold my body together.
How are you now? How do you feel?
Good. Now I've trialled and tested it. I knocked myself out, had a concussion and bruised my lungs, and got some rescans only about 3 months ago, and that was really positive to, step back foot into AIS and watch those, pictures of this sternum bone that we've been watching for years now, and to see that I have tested it. It's fully calcified, nice and white, everything's in one spot, and all the metal hardware, wires, bolts and plates are secure too. So finally it was that, breath of fresh air to go, I'm not only now training at the level I need to be for an elite athlete, but I've also tested it, I've crashed, and, I'm fully healed.
You've got a good team around you, haven't you?
I have. It's, been a blessing to be in Australia, be in Canberra, obviously, for the start of my career before turning 18 and, travelling the world and being that little 18-year-old that moved to America to put her career first. And, between family, support, an immense amount of sponsors and network that I've built over the years, some really good management and agency team behind me. They've helped me be the professional athlete, which has also got through 2 years of being off the bike and still, not having to go to a day job, which has been really refreshing.
Because establishing that brand was very important, wasn't it, for you? You basically became a social influencer for a number of brands.
Yeah, social influencer, I guess you could call it. As well as initially the main goal was to build the BMX brand in general. So no one knew too much about BMX. We were the new kids on the block, and it was a really big goal of mine initially to make the sport known, so help get it on mainstream TV. So when it was footy on a Monday after they've had their weekend games, I was paying a media liaison to help make sure that my World Cup win and BMX was packaged at the same time. So a lot of the money that I invested back into not only building the sport, building my own brand, it was 5 to 7 years of really putting everything back in to, make this momentum happen to be able to be this full-time athlete.
Because you are a full-time athlete. Do you think there is enough support for female athletes in Australia?
It's growing, and I can speak definitely on action sport. No better time in the world is it to be an action sport female athlete. Now with the Tokyo Olympic Games, obviously it's delayed, but it's still there. Surfing, you've got freestyle BMX, the speed, climbing, you've got now this 4x4 basketball, all these different urban elements. BMX racing in the first Summer Olympic Games that we came into, we were those outsider, BMX bandits, not really respected in Beijing. Whereas now it's all these new influence of skateboarders, and that's now, I guess, the norm for these Olympics with all these action sports. So to be a female in action sport, I think is the best time it's ever been. And I think it's really gone are the days of, female athletes really struggling. There's so many opportunities with the right brands and the right people around you to build that.
With all these new sports coming on the scene, we're seeing a lot of action sports sort of suddenly emerging. Do you think the integrity is still there? Do you think that it has been maintained within the sport, given that a lot of these sports are bursting onto the scenes now?
Yeah, it's a different time. And I've been away from Australian sport, I guess, for a long time too, living in California. You sort of become a part of a bubble of action sport over there. So, I can't speak for team sports and things. I've seen both sides of being an elite athlete in Australia. I've seen that peak of the mountain is quite small. The build to the top to get to 2 Olympic Games, to be at the top, to win 8 world titles, 2 Olympics. But then also to see the other side of it right now where, I'm aiming for a 3rd Olympics, but I'm not on the Australian cycling team, and I'm not, I guess you could say, identified as that podium performing athlete. So I've also seen the struggles of that side of it where you don't have that sense of community and support, which I did see for so long. So I think, Australian sport, the tip, there's a lot of support, but it's definitely that mountaintop, and it's easy to fall off, and there's not too much either side of that tip.
Because you're one of the elite athletes in Australia and have been for a number of years, obviously anti-doping testing is a very important part of it, isn't it, to make sure there is a level playing field. Did you feel as though you were being tested enough? Did you feel as though the competitors that you were racing against were tested enough to ensure there was a level playing field?
I think Australia's definitely been the top. I've seen, living in America, still getting tested. I would always get tested over there. I've raced a lot of those countries like the Russians and some of the other European countries where you do doubt the amount of testing. You're naturally always going to have those thoughts that some athletes aren't playing fair, but for the foremost, I think Australia is one of the leading countries that does do it right, does test often. I mean, as soon as I step foot in the country, I've always been tested. I mean, even coming out of COVID, it's like I've already been tested twice, and I'm not even on the Olympic radar. Coming back from injuries, they're always checking in, and it's good because when you want that even playing field, and I think the future of the sport as well for BMX, it was, how do you word this? The ones which I always thought maybe potentially weren't fighting fair, karma always sorted it out. If you built that speed too quickly, you were never going to handle the skill of the track. So injuries and setbacks can happen, and karma generally takes its course. So, BMX is more about skill and power and having that, that finesse and that feel. And it's so explosive and adrenaline and high fear, and that risk reward is so high. I think that's more the even playing field.
You mentioned there you're not on the Australian team at the moment, but you do have an opportunity, don't you, to prove your worth first week of December on the Gold Coast?
Yeah, so everything's a sliding scale. Everything's changing at the moment. We were told 3 World Cups start of this coming 2021 calendar would count towards Olympic selection. I've had 1 World Cup that I didn't tick the top 5 AOC Olympic box. So my one opportunity back from being out of the sport for 2 years, I didn't tick that box, and that was enough for me to not be on the Australian Olympic team, to not be not Australian Olympic team, Australian cycling team. From here, if those international World Cups events don't happen, we're hearing that there's going to be some like mock trial Olympic testing, basically mini trials events that will start the first weekend of December. And then on the month, every month. So if the world doesn't open up and we don't have these competitions, it'll be head-to-head with the best in Australia to send the best team on the day.
After being at the top for so long, suddenly you're a little bit of an outsider. Does it give you more motivation? Do you think, well, I've just got to prove myself time and time again now?
Yeah, definitely. Fires. I've always been sort of fired by that adversity. And for me, it did. It lit that flame to sort of look at my own personal weaknesses and part of my team and go, if I'm not necessarily allowed to step foot into the AIS, or I won't be on these Australian team camps. At the moment with COVID, knowledge is really power, and that, belief is free at the moment, but there still is so much a wall, you could say, when you do fall outside the program of even just knowledge and belief. So I sort of looked at that and said, if I don't have that, how can I bring that in? So that nurturing environment, really leaning on family, leaning on friends, bringing in and investing into some other coaches that can really help keep me accountable. Look into gaps, obviously, in my training program. One was obviously conditioning and gym and just building that strength and power, which is so key in BMX. So everyone from helping with a new lifting coach who's every week helping critique me. So Grant Haynes has been amazing. Julian Jones still continues to write my programs. And then skills coach with like Luke Medill always checking in. And then, my new boyfriend who's become a huge asset to that as well. So to me, it's been a blessing, but I've had to reshape and recreate that support network sitting on the outside of this bubble, wanting to still achieve.
You mentioned there the team you've got and the focus that you've got on your own career, but you are also heavily investing in the next generation as well, young females coming through. That's something that is a huge passion of yours, isn't it, the next generation coming through?
Yeah, I've been running Buchanan Next Gen. Initially was a team turned into a scholarship program. So $76,000 of support now I've helped put back into women in BMX and helping 12 girls now travel from Australia international to compete on the world stage and give them that opportunity. Once I saw the world stage at my first World Championships in Paris, I knew that, that was the future for me and that I wanted to be that BMX bandit. Yeah, that's been really rewarding to give back to them. And now with the help of partners like Rubik 3, they've come on board and said, we want to help with this initiative and I hope to continue to grow it in the future.
Caroline, all the best next year at the postponed Tokyo Olympic Games. Hopefully you're on the team and hopefully you do well over there. Thanks very much for joining us today on Onside.
Thank you.
You're listening to Onside, the official podcast of Sport Integrity Australia.
Well, time now for From the Highlight Reel, where we relive one of the greatest moments in Australian sport. And today we're reliving John Aloisi's magic penalty goal against Uruguay, which put Australia through to the 2006 Football World Cup in Germany. And John is with us. And John, can you believe that we're still talking about it today?
It's funny because it's been brought up since that night. It's been brought up to me probably nearly every day while I've been back in Australia because it just it was a huge moment for us Socceroo players, but also for everyone that followed the game for so many years. We hadn't qualified for 32 years, and even the general sports lover. It was an amazing night, and I don't mind talking about it, of course, because it was such a memorable one.
Well, let's relive it now.
That means that if John Aloisi can score this goal, Australia will be there.
Are you sure?
I'm trying to do my maths.
4-2. 4-2.
I can
He
hardly
wins it
stand
for us. John,
Here's Aloisi for a place in the
you
World
win it
Cup.
for us.
He scored! Australia have done it!
John! Come on!
John Aloisi, the Confederations Cup hero, has done it in the biggest game of all.
Come on, Australia!
Geez, still sends a tingle up the spine, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, it seems a little bit surreal from my side because it's nearly 15 years now, and it doesn't seem like it was really me that was there. But every time you listen to it, just the emotion of Craig Foster and Simon Hill that were commentating that night, and then the crowd. Just the other day, I was at a luncheon, and an AFL player that was at the game was telling me that's the best event he's ever been to. So when other sporting codes say that, then it must have been quite special.
Yes, it was voted by the Sport Australia Hall of Fame Committee as one of the 3 greatest moments in Australian sporting history. So it's going to resonate forever.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that'll resonate for a long time. It's still when people grow up, they remember where they were, what they were doing, whether they were at the game or in a pub or at home. I've heard some funny stories, but it's a special moment. I was lucky to be part of because quite a few of us have been to 2 previous World Cup campaigns in terms of qualifying and missing out. I remember the night in Melbourne against Iran when we didn't qualify. We were 2-0 up. I was on the bench, and that was a moment that will also stay with me forever, but for the wrong reasons. And so to be part of this squad and to end up going to the World Cup was a great feeling.
Can you remember what was going through your mind as you lined up on the spot for a penalty kick that would send Australia through to the World Cup?
Yeah, I remember it clearly because the day before I practiced penalties and they were all down that end. The reason being is because the game was so tight in Uruguay and we thought that we had a good opportunity to win, but it could still go to penalties, and we did end up winning 1-0 with Bresciano's goal. So I stayed behind and practiced 5 penalties all down that end, and I hit at the same corner each time. And I remember Lucas Neal turned to me and said, "Aren't you going to swap sides?" I said, "Well, if we get a penalty shootout, you only get one opportunity." So the next night when I was walking from the halfway line to the penalty spot, it was a confident moment for me because I practiced that before, and all I was saying to myself was do exactly like you did the night before, and we're going to go to the World Cup. And when people talk about being in the zone, I think that's as close as I probably could get to being in the zone, because there were 83,000 people there, but I could only hear whispers in the stadium. My focus was just on, putting the ball down, having the run up I had the night before, and waiting for the referee to whistle, and then I struck it nicely.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you had a representative career that spanned 11 years, 55 caps, 27 goals, had a professional career spanning 20 seasons with league totals of 459 games, 127 goals, yet for 3 seconds, that is what people remember you for. And I guess it's a great moment, but you had a long career around it.
Yeah, lucky I didn't miss, because people would have remembered me for a bad moment. Look, when you play sport, you don't play to please people per se. You play because you want to win. You're passionate about the game, and then if you're lucky enough to have a long career, even better. And the clubs you play for, and also the national team you play for, you want to be successful as possible, and the fans are important. But you also have to know there are going to be a lot of downs in your career. And, over those 20 years, there were a lot of up and downs. And I remember them well. But, that moment there, again, I'll say I was fortunate because it's one that all Australians seem to remember, and I was part of it. And that, there's a lot that goes into a career. It's not those 3 seconds. There's a lot of build up towards that.
And you ripped your shirt off too. It was,
Well, that wasn't planned, but where I ran in the direction was planned, because I had a good feeling that night, but in the days leading up, that could be part of a special moment. I just wanted to know where the family was sitting, so I asked the team manager the day before where they were going to sit in the stands, and that was the direction I ran in when I celebrated the goal.
Football's been pretty good to you, hasn't it? Not only as a player, as a coach, now as a commentator. It's been your life, hasn't it?
It has, and people say that when you're passionate about something, then you never work a day in your life, and that's the way I feel. I've never felt that playing was work, or coaching was work. And even now, being a pundit on Optus Sports, it doesn't feel like work. It's something that I love doing. I love the sport, always have. Again, there's some moments that are hard and you have to get through, but it's not work. It's something that I've been in love with since I was a kid. I've always wanted to play the game, and it has been good to me, but there have been a lot of difficult moments as well.
Yeah, it has been hard, isn't it, as a coach? You're going okay, and then a few losses, and it's a tough time, isn't it, as a coach when things aren't going well?
Yeah, it's a tough time as a coach because the spotlight's more on you, but it's also a tough time as a player, when you're out injured and you can't play and you can't perform, then you need to work your way back into a side, or you're living 20,000 Ks away from home as a 16-year-old to try and make it as a professional. So they're tough times as well. But as a coach, you just need to be mentally strong and know what you're trying to achieve with what you have, because a lot of people don't know what you've got or what you're dealing with inside a club. They only look at the final result. So success can be measured in many ways. So I know that as a coach, and when I'm going into a job, I know what I can do and what I'm capable of doing. So having that self-belief is important as well.
Where was it hardest to play? Italy, England, Spain, or Australia? Where did you find it most challenging?
Everywhere was different. I think that in Italy, I didn't enjoy the football as much because of the way that they played their football back then. And I was in a lower side that were fighting relegation, and we're mainly defending, and it was all about tactics, but the defensive tactics, and being a striker, it wasn't that enjoyable. And plus, your own supporters will get on your back very quickly. So when you're losing, you can't even go outside of your house. And when I went to England, I enjoyed the end to end. The crowd were always with you and supporting you. and then over in Spain, I think it had a mixture of both. I really enjoyed my time, not only as a player in Spain, but just that's probably where I ended up having the most friends and really feeling at home. But Australia was great because you're playing with players that have grown up in the same background as you in terms of different states, but going through national teams and that. So I enjoyed playing back here in Australia as well.
And John, I mentioned you're a commentator now. Do you find that easy? Is it an easy transition for a coach, a player to go into commentary?
Oh, it feels easy because you're talking about something that you love and that you enjoy. But there also has to be you need to do your research and make sure you know what you're talking about. Now with social media, you can't make too many mistakes when you're a pundit. People pick it up on it pretty quickly. So as long as you're across everything, it can become easy. And it's like with anything, you get better as time goes on.
All right. Great to talk to you, John, and no doubt in the lead up to the next World Cup qualifiers. Nobody's really sure when those qualifiers are going to take place, but no doubt they'll relive that goal in the lead up to the next World Cup, and hopefully Australia's going to be there. Thanks very much for joining us today on Onside.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, joining us now on Onside is Paralympian runner Chad Perris. Chad won a bronze medal in 2016 in the 100 metres. He's a World Championship silver medalist, preparing, of course, for the Tokyo Paralympics next year. But Chad has an interesting backstory. He's also a sports commentator, even though he is visually impaired. Chad is alongside us on Onside. Chad, firstly, how did you get started in sports commentary? Because obviously, being vision impaired, it's hard to see the athletes, but how did you get started?
Yeah, I think. Firstly, thanks for having me. It's great to be in here today. And basically, I got into athletics, and then just through that, getting the opportunity when I wasn't racing on a weekend to be able to go in and jump into the booth for one of the local meets, just a local athletics ACT club meet was. One of the things that I went for, and I think just having a crack at it, and I knew that it was going to be difficult because I can't see too well. Like I got between 5 and 8% vision, so it's not the greatest thing starting off as a commentator. You need to have basically perfect sight, I think, to be able to do it. And there are a lot of struggles that I had doing it, but I think using binoculars from start to finish and being able to identify bodies basically right from the start and knowing the names that I was calling is the biggest challenge, and I was able to get through that pretty quickly, I think.
So how do you identify the athletes? Is it by their movement? Is it by the way they run? How do you identify athletes, given you can't really see their faces, you can't see their numbers?
Usually by sort of colours, so we're in an era now, and you'd know as a commentator yourself with players wearing on the footy field wearing bright boots and all that sort of stuff. It's the same in athletics, where a lot of people have a wide range of different coloured spikes on their feet to singlets and shorts and all that sort of stuff, and identifying people that way as well. And it's just making a quick note of it, especially at a club meet where there's not a lot of time to prepare. Not a lot of time to prepare necessarily. You get people coming in and entering on the day, so you don't have the time to be able to look and know who's going to be in a race. You sort of rock up, you get given a start list, and you've got less than 30 seconds to figure out who's in that race. So you sort of go down lanes 2 to 8, and then just sort of make an identifying factor of each one, and also look at a seed time as well, so you know who's going to be in that sort of top 4 or 5 as well, so you know who you're going to be calling at the finish line, basically.
Yes, lanes 4, 5 and 6 usually.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, inside lanes, it's always the one.
Yeah. Just on, I guess, the reaction from other sports commentators or people who, when you say, listen, I've only got 5% vision, but I'm here to commentate, what's usually the reaction?
It's usually a bit hesitant. It's the same with sort of anything that I go into that I do. Like I used to play footy as a junior, Aussie rules footy, that is. And as a junior, I went in there and I wore a sunnies and a hat when I played. And you'd always get people questioning, like, how can this guy play this when he can't see? So I've dealt with it all my life, and people sort of like asking, how can you do this? And it's mainly just going in there, and you have to go and prove yourself to people that you can do it, because I think it's always going to be one of those ones where you're vision impaired going into a game where you need to have good sight to be able to call something. And I know as a massive sports fan myself that commentary is a very subjective thing, and as soon as you hear a commentator that you might not like something they've said or your voice, there's a lot of people going to go offside on that straight away. So you've got to be on the ball 100% of the time.
I mentioned a moment ago you're preparing for the Tokyo Paralympics next year. Beyond Tokyo, have you thought, well, gee, I'd like to get into sports commentary and commentate other sports?
Yeah, I think it's something that I'd like to do sort of on the side a little bit. Like I like athletics. It's quite a decent one for me because I know the game really well, and I follow a lot of other sports that I sort of like your footies and all that sort of stuff as well. And I'd like to be able to at least have an opportunity to do that at some point. I haven't really thought about it too much post athletics. I did a bit of stuff doing like the special comments work at the IPC Athletics World Championships in 2017. So I was in the London Olympic Stadium there and I was sitting alongside two guys, Tulson Tullett and Will Downing, who do a lot of stuff in Europe. And watching one thing that I took out of it was the preparation work that they do and being able to sit there as well. Like it's not an easy job to be able to sit and concentrate. For these guys were sitting there for 2 weeks straight, morning and night sessions, just race after race after race, getting themselves up for every single race. It's very draining. And one thing that I took from them was how impressive their preparation was. And that's something that I'd like to try and do and be able to have a crack at. Not sure if I'm sort of cut out to do it full time or whatever, but I'd definitely like to have a go at it in some other sport at some stage.
Let's talk about your track and field career. I mentioned a moment ago you won the bronze medal in 2016 in Rio. You're a World Championship silver medalist. Predominantly the 100 metres is your focus, even though you do run 200, but it's not a Paralympic event, the 100. So the focus for you is very much on the 100 metres. What preparation do you go through? What training do you do for 100 metres? Because it's over pretty quickly.
Yeah, it is, and it's a lot of work behind the scenes with me and my coach Irina Dvoskina. We do tireless amounts of work, 6 days a week, 2 training sessions a day most weeks, and it's extremely difficult and grueling training. And I think that if there wasn't that carrot at the end of the tunnel with the games coming up in Tokyo next year, it'd be extremely challenging. But I love the training, and it's one of those ones where you finish a day and you're absolutely knackered, and you get to the bed and you sort of don't want to get up the next day for it, but then you just rock up to training anyway, and you sort of go through and do it all again. And when you're at the start line and you know all the training's complete, you've completely it's funny, you completely forget about all the hard work that's gone into it at that point. You're sort of so excited about racing, and that's all you can think about is racing. You kind of forget about how much work has gone into it. So being able to appreciate that at this time now, where we've got just under a year to go until Tokyo 2021 now, it's something that being able to sit back and have a look at now at the hard work that's going into it, it's extremely difficult. I've walked in here after a training session this morning, which I was absolutely cooked after a big day yesterday as well. So, and it's just something that we got to go through as athletes, and I'm not the only one that'll do it. And I know that all my competition are doing it as well. So that's one of the driving factors too.
There won't be much competition overseas, and that is predominantly what athletes of your calibre do. They go overseas and prepare a lot of the time, and athletes come out to Australia as well. Doesn't look as though there's going to be too much of that in the lead up to the Tokyo Paralympics.
Yeah, I don't think so. There's a few competitions, European competitions and all that sort of thing, but the thing that we have to deal with here in Australia is being able to come back into the country, and you essentially are going to have to waste 2 weeks in a hotel room when you come back. So we're going to do all that preparation here in Australia. It'll be leading into this summer, staying here in Canberra, doing everything, all the hard work here, and then in the winter next year we'll go up to the Gold Coast in North Queensland, and I think spend a bit of time in Cairns for maybe a month or two before those games, and then go into Tokyo straight from North Queensland. So spending a bit of time in Australia is always good, and we do a lot of preparation in Australia as well, so it won't be foreign to us, but. The lack of international competition is there, but it's not going to affect myself too drastically. So,
just as a final question, what are your chances? You won the bronze in Rio. You must be feeling as though, well, I've got that one out of the way, the first one. I know what to expect now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I'm 28 years old now. I'll be 29 next year, and coming into those games, I've got a lot of experience. I've been to I think 5 major championships now, Worlds and Paris, and I think I won silver at the last event, and I've got a very strong competitor in Jason Smith, who's going to he's an Irishman who's going to always challenged me. He hasn't lost this event at an international meet since I think about 2006 when he started. So he's undefeated, and it's a very very tall task to get past. But I think I'm putting in the work to be able to at least get within his sort of ballpark. So that is the biggest challenge. But all I'm doing right now is to be able to get through and do all of my work as much as I can. And I'm going to benefit for the extra year training leading into Tokyo. I think it's going to be an exciting one, and that's one positive that I took out of it, was that extra year's training is going to benefit me massively. So I'm really, really keen to get out there, and it's just under a year away, but it feels like it's tomorrow, and it's just going to be an extra year's wait, really. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Good on you, Chad. Thanks very much for joining us on Side, talking about your commentary, and hopefully it eventuates beyond doing local track and field and hopefully IPC and a few other events that might be around the corner. But well done on that, but also good luck for Tokyo next year.
Thanks very much. Pleasure to be here.
And now for our segment From Left Field, where we answer a question from the public.
Hey everyone, my name's Laura Britton. I'm an Olympic weightlifter and a clean sport educator with Sport Integrity Australia. The question I have from left field today is, how can we actually tell if someone is using a performance-enhancing drug? Well, there are a number of ways that an athlete can be caught doping in addition to testing positive on either a urine or a blood test. This includes monitoring selected biological variables over time with the athlete biological passport, which indirectly reveal the effects of doping rather than detecting the doping substance or the method itself. In addition to this, clues to indicate someone might be doping include sudden physical changes that don't align with their training and diet, changes in behaviour such as becoming more secretive, associating with people they wouldn't normally, or even unusual parcels being delivered to their home. If these behaviours are reported to Sport Integrity Australia, an investigation could occur and the athlete could be caught if they are using, trafficking or administering a banned substance.
Thanks for listening to Onside. I'm Tim Gable. If you'd like more details about Sport Integrity Australia, simply head to our website, sportintegrity.gov.au.
You've been listening to Onside, the official podcast of Sport Integrity Australia. Send in your podcast questions or suggestions to media@sportintegrity.gov.au. For more information on Sport Integrity Australia, please visit our website www.sportintegrity.gov.au or check out our Clean Sport app.